All right, so yesterday we finished off with the video of the very nice lady with the awesome fingernails. Her name was? Is it Crystal? Something. Maybe I think I have a little thing for her.
Yeah, you've seen her yet.
I've seen her hands. She got pretty hands. She's got nice nails.
All you need, huh?
She works on airplanes. She could do avionics work. What else do I need to know? It's kind of like the old joke. Hey, you know, single guy looking for a nice.
It's cousin it. It's just two hands.
Looking for a nice lady who knows how to do avionics. Please send me a picture of your wire crimpers and your AMP certificate. You never heard that one? Looking for a nice widow with a bass boat, loves to go fishing. Please send me a picture of your bass boat. Okay. All right. So use proper crimping technique. What was unique about the way we crimp now? Because it's we. How do we crimp wires?
Crimp it twice.
Yeah.
Once on the actual wire bundle, and then once on the Teflon coating.
Yep. And how can we distinguish between, I should say, I don't want to say aviation approved, but what is an aviation approved wire end? What makes it approved? It's not really.
It's mil spec.
Mil spec. And what's the difference between the mil spec ones we use versus the ones you can get at Home Depot or
You can see through them.
transparent? So there's a lot of things in aviation where it's funny. Everything's supposed to be approved, like our hardware. Well, it doesn't really say approved on it or PMA. It's mil spec hardware, AN hardware, and it comes from a reputable source. We use nylon ties, zip ties a lot in aviation. And I remember when I first got into aviation, I'm looking because there's some up there. And what on the camera?
On the camera.
What makes those approved or not approved? Anybody have any idea?
Probably fire resistance or
Going back mil spec. Yeah, I knew a guy one time. He worked on an airplane, did an annual, and the aircraft, the gear didn't come down, so it bellied in, and sued this mechanic. And he had tied up a bunch of wires in the wheel well with nylon ties, and the court, they handed him nylon tie and said, "Can you explain to me why that is an approved nylon tie for use on an aircraft, especially in a wheel well?" And he had no answer for it, but the correct answer was you'd be mil spec, and I believe the mil specs actually have a little metal tang in them. But outside of that, I've never heard of anybody getting into trouble for using just regular wire ties. I do. I'll just pick them up at Harbor Freight. I'm on camera, I'll admit it. The big difference is I don't use them in an area where the failure of all of them would matter at all. I only use nylon ties in an area that just makes it nicer. So, and Cessna used them, so yeah.
We used, instead of ties, we used like string.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Lacing.
Mil spec string or
Oh,
something.
yeah, I use that too. It's like that wax string that you can tie wires.
So where you get that from is, and in my shop we had it by the miles because we did fabric restoration. That is rib lacing cord.
Rib lacing?
It's rib lacing cord.
What's rib lacing?
Well, so when you put fabric on aircraft, you have
Oh, yeah,
your
yeah,
metal.
yeah. Oh, it's to...
The fabric actually has to be tied to all the ribs.
Yeah.
And so you actually go through the entire wing and back down, and you lace it, and you string it. So you use rib lacing cord and this is all relevant in case you're wondering about wires and keeping wires safe and not rubbing on things. It's a big deal. So, when I'm thinking about my friend Renner Aviation, he's fantastic. If you ever really want first class work, I mean, he's like one of the best. And we worked together for so many years, and we thought too much alike, which is kind of butted heads sometimes. But whenever we would get an annual in that we never worked on before, it seemed like the two of us would just squawk the hell out of the thing, and it was always stuff like that. Wires chafing on this, wires rubbing on that. It was just all this little tiny stuff that we're always doing. And in aviation, you just, you don't want a wire rubbing on something because then it's going to either, and some of you have a short is when power goes to ground unintentionally. It shorts, it cuts, and doesn't go to the load. So what happens when a wire chafes through, and there's a lot of sharp metal edges in an airplane. What happens when a wire rubs on a sharp metal edge and wears through?
Insulation wears through.
And then what happens? You get a short, and the wire will what? It'll
Pop the breaker.
what will the wire do? The wire will get a little melty right up until the time the breaker pops, and that's what it's there for, to pop the breaker. So
Alternatively, the wire can vibrate and wear through whatever it's rubbing on.
yep.
So if you have a very high pressure hard line for fuel or hydraulics or whatever, and now it has a pinhole at 3,000 psi right where that wire was.
Yep. So one of the other things. Plus we have cables running all around the aircraft, control cables for steering and stuff. So
What about use of like what do they call it stuff? Sorry, corrugation. The corrugation stuff. What's it called?
centipede grommet.
Yeah. The stuff. It'll. God, for some reason.
It forms around holes.
You buy in like a big roll. It's like a loom.
It goes
Loom.
over
The
the
wire loom.
Oh, wire loom stuff.
Yeah,
It'll
yeah.
be in a conduit now. But yeah.
So it has to be in a conduit if it has wire loom on it. You think?
No.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
That's like a conduit.
Oh, like a conduit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that?
If you would have looked, well, you probably can't see it because my bottom cowling is still on my aircraft, but right below it, I have a whole huge wire bundle because I have that JPI engine monitor, which has a probe, cylinder head temp probe, and EGT probe for every cylinder. So I've got a bunch of wires, and those run inside of a fiberglass protective sleeve, because the way you connect wires for CHT and EGT, that's cylinder head temp, exhaust gas temp, they're thermocouple wires, and they're bare, and they have ringlets on it, and so you screw them together, and so it has a bare wire right there, and so now you got bare wire right next to a bare wire, next to a bare wire, next to an engine, and so they have fiberglass sleeving over them to protect that, which is.
So what about just like for regular wire, for other like non like your lights or something like that? Like
Yeah, it's typically. I'm trying to picture that wire, the loom you're talking about.
sometimes it's just like this braided
Yeah, braided.
polyethylene or something like that or something, and it's got like a fire resistant.
Yeah, I guess you'd use that near an abrasion point.
Yeah, that's
if
what I
you
was
need
wondering.
to,
It's
yeah.
because you're running it all the way through a wing or something or like that, or the fuse, and it's like.
Typically, it's not. The wire's just tied up, so it doesn't rub. Let's see. Terminal connections. Let me see. We did that. Watch the video. How many ends can you put? How many wires ends can you put on something? All right. Let's see. We did that. All right. So, keeping with what we're talking about, because it's segued in really nice, is some other things. This is a Q&A question right here. I don't think it might be, it's either out of order, I don't mention it. These are called cannon plugs. And I don't know if I have it in here, but cannon plugs. Might be a Q&A question. You can see how this end plugs into this end. There's an extra end over here. Maybe that one plugs into this one. But anyway, you have the male and the female. Which one should have the power to it, and which one is the power from it towards the load?
Power from it is the pins. Power to it is the grommet, the gudgeon, whatever it's called.
So if I took a voltmeter and I put it across these pins, would I see power?
That'd be negative. Or negative.
Or would I find the power in here?
Power in there.
Why would you do it to this one? Why would this be power?
Protects from short circuit.
Absolutely. You can drop a nut, wrench, anything on this, and you won't have a problem. You drop a wrench or a nut on that, you got a big problem. Speaking of that, now that we're talking a lot and you guys are starting to work with batteries, it's absolutely critical when you install a battery in an aircraft in what manner you do it. And I would even do this on a car, unless you have a Corvette that's fiberglass, or a Cirrus that's fiberglass. But when you attach cables to a battery, the very first one you attach is the positive, because when you have the positive, you put the positive on and you have a wrench and you're turning it. If that wrench comes around and hits the aircraft, you don't have a complete circuit because the battery negative is off. So you can do it all day. You can go positive, take it would be, well, I don't have anything metal in here, but it's just not a problem. You could take a wire, your little alligator wires, and put your alligator wire on the positive of the battery and put it right on the airframe. Guess what happens?
No,
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing. So if you accidentally hit it, nothing happens. Then you go over to the negative side and you put the cable on. And what happens if you accidentally hit the wrench onto the aircraft at that point? Nothing, because it's the same as the negative cable that's already touching it, so it doesn't matter. And then when you,
complete circuit.
what's that?
It's already a complete circuit.
It's already a complete circuit. You're just paralleling what's already there. It doesn't hurt it at all. And so when you go to take things off, what's the first to take off?
The
Ground.
Ground. So let me tell you, I know better. I 100% know better. And somebody else worked on my airplane, and I had, so I had to do something. So I went back and I checked I put the negative back on, and I thought to myself, somebody else has been near my aircraft, and I don't know if they might have messed with the positive cable. I'm going to just verify real quick that the positive is good. And I know better, so I'm going to be extremely careful not to, oh shit, I just touched the side, I blew a hole right through the airplane. That fast. That fast. Thinking about what not to do at that time, I put a hole through the aircraft. Now, if that would have been a customer's aircraft, I'd be in a world of trouble. If it was my own aircraft, it just sucked like hell. And it happened so fast. It was one spark and there was a hole right through it. So, yeah. And I almost did it again the other day because I was like doing something. I'm like, well, I should double. No, I ain't freaking double checking that. Because building engines, I was, double check your torque. You just torque. Okay, double check. And so it's just a habit. I'm like, nope, not again. Oh, what could it hurt? It's already a hole. So, anyway. So we don't do that. So, okay. Talking about proper installation techniques is what we're really talking about. So I threw it out in there because I think it's a Q&A question or something. All right. So proper installation techniques. We are going to use, these are called Adele clamps, like the singer. Adele clamps. And if you don't, when I say that, these are Adele clamps. If you didn't just now yell, I hate those things, you've never worked with them.
P-clamp?
Huh?
P-clamp?
Adele clamps.
Okay. I've just.
A P-clamp is something your urologist uses. Why do you hate these things?
Fucking annoying as hell
God,
to get a fucking bolt through them.
They have the spring tension of, God, I can't even compare it. If you don't hold it just right, and of course you're using the smallest fucking screws and nuts on these things, and you're putting like 4 bundles of wire in it, and it springs off and it falls.
Yeah.
And of course it's rubber, so you don't hear it go clink, clink, clink all the way down. So you spend 8 hours on a 30-minute job at the bottom of the helicopter hunting for it.
Yeah, you gotta lay on your back and reach above your body like this. You're
Man,
paying
as
attention.
if like it's happened before to him.
So that's that's exactly it. You only left off one thing. So these are they're usually made out of steel. When you bring this end down to this end, one hole is right there.
Yeah, trying to bend
Yep.
it right.
Actually, it's just enough like there. And so the screw won't go in. So you have to take an ice pick or something and bend it like this. And with one hand, you're holding it, take the ice pick out, then it goes like that again. So, yes.
You gotta fit the screw in while it's loose, and then you have to crank it down and hope to God the screw doesn't pop out. There's only like 3 threads coming through.
Yep.
You just
Yep.
gave me an idea on how to get rich.
They do make a plier now for these things. They
Oh
do.
my god, I was thinking about making different ones of those.
So these holes right here either come in 3/16 or 1/4 inch. And I worked with the guy, it was right before I started working there. He needed an Adele clamp, and it happened to have these smaller 3/16, and he needed to be 1/4 inch because he's a really smart guy. He thought, well, I should just drill a hole through there. So he turned on the drill press. He put his finger through it, held it up to the drill press, and it tore his finger almost all the way off.
Oh, nice.
So don't do that.
Yeah, that rubber's not
I
bad.
think that's my plans.
Yeah.
Or when you have to clamp 2 of them together, like if you're clamping a hard line to some wires.
Right here, like this, kind of like this, yeah, but instead of having this bracket down here, it's
another
2 of them. Yeah, so you get 4 holes that don't line up. They're wonderful. But let me tell you, the thing about them is This is what makes an installation look professional. It's this type of thing. When you use Adele clamps that are the proper size, using the proper hardware, it sucks. You should see me what I look like when I'm done running wires from the front of my plane to the back. Cessna uses some sort of clamp that screws up in there, and then it's got a loop where you actually loop through a nylon tie and then tie that. So you cannot see it and touch it at the same time. You can either see it or you can touch it, and you can only touch it with one hand because you're working through holes this big with sharp metal around them. So I'm just cut all the way, and I'm built to work on airplanes. I got the wrists of my 7-year-old or my 17-year-old daughter. Actually has bigger wrists than I do, I think, and she's only that tall. So so we have Adele clamps. This is centipede grommet right here. I don't know if you can see the little teeth in it. And what that does, it goes right here like that, actually. That's not a centipede. Oh, there's a centipede right there. That's centipede grommet. You have to protect the wire. So this is double protected. One, there's centipede grommet. Two, there's Adele with an angle bracket so that that will not rub against that. And this is where it makes good airplane mechanics versus, well, there's a lot of things, but this is one of them.
The teeth are on the outside?
What's that?
Like the teeth of the...
The teeth go on the outside. Yep, yeah.
What if you're retrofitting like an older airplane to have some type of system, you know, and through the bulkheads or something you have to run all those wires? Can you just drill holes in that bulkhead and do that? I mean, that sounds to me like a
I wouldn't just drill holes like that willy-nilly. I would kind of take a look at it. A lot of times there are holes in there. Sometimes they're just lightning holes. But yeah,
How would you do that?
I would evaluate it. And if I did drill, like if it's got a big lightning hole like that, that's not lightning like God smote you, lightning like it makes it lighter. If there's a lightning hole like that right there,
isn't there a whole process that in metalworking where you have to be so many for
edge distance? So what I'm saying, I don't see where, and this is where you get in trouble. See how I just used a qualifier. I don't see why it would be a problem.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it won't be, just means I won't see it. But I don't see a problem doing that. As long as you have proper edge distance and it's an appropriate clamp and you did a professional job and you drilled it properly and you deburred everything. And then I'm assuming that you're doing the work. You would then fill out a 337 major alteration repair, maybe include that in there, something like that. But it's better than letting the cables lay on the metal. I'd rather do that.
What if it's just going through a grommet that fits the wire perfectly?
Then go for it. That's done a lot. And so you go grommet, and it depends on how far apart they are and how they loop. Because you don't want to pull wires tight because aircraft expand and contract. Not a lot unless they're big airplanes, then they do a lot. So Adele clamps, grommets, so centipede grommet and regular grommet. So what happens if you have to put a regular grommet? So say these grommets will fit in a hole and then the wire runs through it, but the wire is already run. You're like, damn, I'd love to put a grommet in. What do?
Cut it.
Cut the wire and then splice the wire?
Yes.
Just cut the grommet, slip it over, put it in. Splice, okay.
Yeah, cut the entire.
Cut the bundle.
Yeah. Take some garden shears.
Yeah.
Make sure they're live too.
So I do have, I guess, some rules in here that I could throw out here. All right, so let's see. We're talking about proper installation. Use cushioned Adele clamps. Oh yeah, they're sometimes called cushion clamps. Did I start the video? Yes, I did. Wonder how many times I do that. Did I start the video? Use cushioned Adele clamps to hold bundle or to hold anything. It's just I have installed clamps at proper angle per AC 4313 figure 1-1, but I think that just kind of stands for a reason. 27, 28. Use grommets. If there is less than 3/8 of an inch from wire to bulkhead. Lace bundles. And that's where we use that lacing cord. It's, I can't really describe it. It's super easy to do. It's just like almost, you tie it off on one end and then you run it so many inches and then you just do a loop, but you run it through one time and then to the next one. Once you see it done, it's like, oh, that's simple. Huh?
Like a half hitch.
Half hitch, that's the word I wanted. Yeah, half hitch. Let me see, use bundles. Let me see, lace bundles, or use MS3367. I think I got this out of 4313 nylon ties. And you pick those up at any Harbor Freight, I'm sure. Oh, with proper tool. With proper tool. You want to get me excited about something? You cut your nylon ties with the regular wire cutters. I'm going to get kind of excited on you. Why?
You want to use the flush cutters.
Flush cut. If you don't own a pair of flush cut, what's the proper word? Dikes, then don't use nylon ties. It's that simple. Don't do it.
Is it similar to the reason why if you don't pigtail your safety wire, that's...
Yep.
You want to piss yourself off and everyone else after you.
You tell me I can't cut it at an angle from the next
So I thought I actually had a picture here. Somewhere I do. It's like, if you do this, I hate you.
My son has like brass knuckles with a bunch of poorly cut zip ties.
Yeah, when you cut zip ties, nylon ties with the wrong tool, oh my gosh, it hurts so bad. It just creates little razor blades everywhere. So, you know, you're sticking your hand in places you can't see. Yeah. So use flush cut, and they're, you know, and then the other thing is, if you buy a pair of flush cut dikes, I have a really nice pair of Snap-on. Hide them from the boss, because my boss, and God love him, he's the best guy I ever worked for in my life, was notorious for coming and getting your flush cut dikes, only that big, and cutting some 040 safety wire. So we hid him from him. So, all right, let's see. Lace bundles. There's some points that were made in, I think it's 4313. So, yeah, limit the size of bundles. Limit the size of bundles. Yeah, good luck with that. If you got to run a wire from point A to point B, you don't really want to find, oh, there's already 8 there, I'm going to find a new route. You go with what you got. But just understand, the bigger the bundle gets, the harder it is to troubleshoot. And if a wire breaks in there or something, it's like, oh my God, you're not going to find it. And then you never start. When you have to trace wires, do not trace wires in an aircraft. You're just going to create all kinds of problems. You're going to make things worse. So you can't just go, well, where does this go? And you kind of, it goes in this bundle, and because you're always on your back under the instrument panel. Well, I'll pull this one like this, and see, pull this one. And all you do is just make a big mess of the aircraft and start breaking wires. Pretty soon, like, oh, there's the problem. It's not connected to a crimped end. Well, okay, so where does it go? And you don't even know anymore, and then you attach it to something that didn't go to, and say, oh my gosh, don't do that. Let's see, limit the size of bundles. Yeah, to minimize the damage that could result from a single electrical fault. Yeah, soapstone talc, such as tire talc, may be used to lubricate the inside of electrical conduit or vinyl tubing to aid in electrical wires being pulled through. So, lube wires. Before pulling with soapstone or tire talc, which is like baby powder. Let's see.
Yeah, mil-spec baby powder.
Yeah, it is. It's mil-spec baby powder. There's a lot of stuff about bonding jumpers. So when installing bonding jumpers. So pieces of the aircraft, because of the way they're high speed, we have air flowing over it, it creates a lot of static electricity, You're a helicopter guy. I think they're worse, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
So-
It's real bad somehow, even though it doesn't move the same.
Did you ever get shocked by one?
No, we specifically have these, 1/4-inch thick cables that we have to plug into the side of the bird whenever specifically when it's in hangar.
Okay.
But typically we have static discharge ports and stuff like that littered all over the aircraft.
So when I was in the Navy, I was on an ammunition supply ship, and our big thing, we did UNREP, and we did VERTREP. And so we had 2 CH-46 helicopters, which are the small Chinooks. And they would bring the cargo out onto our flight deck, and the aircraft would just hover over the flight deck. Well, they wouldn't hover because the ship's moving, so they're flying sideways. And so they would have some sort of pallet or whatever and rope on that was, I don't know, 8-10 feet long with PVC pipe. And those aircraft have a trap door in them where the loadmaster would be in a big hook. And so what would happen, you'd watch it, that loadmaster would not touch that pallet, that rope, until they'd come up, they'd smack it on the belly of the aircraft, and then hand it to him. So they'd ground out, hand it, then he would grab it and put it on the hook, and they'd fly off. So, and he would not touch that rope until it had been grounded out. So anyway, so aircraft developed this static electricity. Well, aside from creating arcs and stuff, which can really start messing with your radios, you can also just get arcing problems, radio problems, all kinds of stuff, right? And so you will look at some aircraft, they will actually, even though it's mechanically connected, I want to say my ailerons are that way. Even though my ailerons have a metal hinge that go to the metal wing, they actually have a jumper wire. It's just braided copper wire that is screwed to the wing. It's screwed to the aileron, just a piece of wire. It's like it's a piece of ground wire. It's like, why are you grounding out your ailerons? Well, it's a bonding jumper. So you'll see those in a lot of places. Engines have to do that because they have rubber motor mounts to minimize vibration. Well, that doesn't bond to the aircraft, so you got to have big ground cables bonding that. You see them all over the place. So install bonding jumpers. The key to that is keep them as short as possible. And low resistance. You want them low resistance. I have 0.003 ohms or less. And then I go into what it is. Bonding is the act of grounding an aircraft. This may be necessary if the item is installed with rubber insulators, shocks. A lot of things have shock mounts. I know for whatever reason I'm picturing I worked on an air conditioning system for an aircraft, and we do things funny in aircraft. So, an air conditioning system on your car has a compressor that's run off a belt up on the engine. Well, a lot of aircraft that have factory air, they will do that. But a lot of aircraft don't do that. You can get a retrofit kit where you put the compressor in the back of the airplane. Like my airplane, there's no place to put it up front, so it's easier to put the compressor in the back. So they'll just put the compressor in the back, and they'll put it on a plate that has rubber mounts. So when it vibrates, it doesn't vibrate the whole airframe, so it's on rubber mounts, but it's a motor, electric motor, that drives the compressor that runs the air conditioner. And those have to be bonded, so that's like something to be bonded. Let's see, bonded, yeah. That's instrument panels. Oh yeah, that's another one, instrument panels. Forgot, instrument panels are almost always have little pieces that they're held, there's a panel and then a sub panel. So like my aircraft, it has, I know all of them, has a structural panel in front of you, but there'll be like this much of it you can actually unscrew and take right out and leave a big opening. Like, whoa, what that? Mine actually only has 2 pieces about that big on one side, and the other side was the adult front, but I changed it. So they have rubber shock mounts because they have instruments that run off a gyro, and they want to insulate the airplane vibrations from that. So those have to be bonded, otherwise you get all kinds of stuff. Let's see. Yeah, keep all items of the same electrical potential, eliminate static discharge. Copper is used, we already covered this. Wire from the generator to the bus bar is usually very large or small?
Large.
Large, how come?
It's carrying a lot of current.
Carrying a lot of current, and we have to worry about voltage drops. Yeah.
Going back to the bonding jumper stuff, some of the aircraft that I worked on had like a copper lattice almost under the paint, so you'd have your panel,
Yeah.
you'd have a layer of copper, and then you have your primer coat, another primer coat, and then your outer coat.
Dang.
And it was for lightning strikes and static.
Wow.
Just remember that. So
Okay.
that was.
Were they metal airplanes or plastic?
It was some of the panels were metallic, and then the panels that weren't metallic, that were fiberglass,
Yeah.
carbon fiber, those had a copper lattice.
That's what I was thinking.
To
They were,
protect
yeah.
for static and lightning strikes.
Let's see. Wire from the generator to bus bar is usually very large. Voltage drop needs to be less than. So we can write that. So G, wire from generator to bus. For some reason, every time I write bus, like a bus bar, I want to use two S's. Like that should have two S's because it's a different kind of bus. We need to keep the voltage drop less than 2%. So in a 14 volt system, 2% is 0.28 of a volt. So they're really keeping it. You know, we've kind of gone away now from this, what was like half a volt or 1 volt on the chart. And they're saying that wire from the generator to the bus bar, it's got to really have no voltage drop. So 28 volt is got to be kept at 0.56 of a volt. A lot different than what that chart shows, right? Now, this is generator specific, generator to bus bar, which usually isn't a very long run anyway. All right, when installing wires parallel to fuel lines, so wires parallel to fuel lines. What goes on top?
Wire.
Hey, why is the wire goes on top?
It doesn't catch fire.
I look at it this way. It's not going to hurt the fuel line if electrons fall out. Now, enough of them in an arc strike, that'd be a bad thing. But a few electrons falling out of a piece of wire is not going to hurt anything. But fuel dripping onto an electrical wire
Could cause a problem.
is going to eventually destroy the wire and then cause a problem. So, all right. Oh, ANMS connectors, cannon plug should have the pins of the grounded hot side, so the sockets on hot side. Okay. Do not bend wire. Keep your wire bends reasonable. So, do not tightly bend wire.
It's like 10 times the 10-to-1 ratio, something like that.
Yeah, it becomes even more critical if using coax cable. Say, minimum bend radius is 10x. Minimum bend radius is 10 times the outside diameter of the bundle. So example, if bundle is 1 inch across, that'd be the 1 inch across. Not across because it's
for bundles. It was like 5 times, and it was like individual wire was 10 times.
I got this out of 4313.
Okay, then I probably remember.
Or maybe I picked up the wrong thing, but I just wanted to make something good, so I picked a 1 inch. So 10 times the outside diameter of the wire bundle. So bundle is 1 inch. The radius is 10 inch. Then radius is 10 inches, and that looks like kind of this. 10 inches, so the wire would have to be kind of in a loop like that.
Good reason to keep your bundles small.
Yeah. When it gets to be a 1 inch bundle, you couldn't bend it much more than that anyway. You can't really right angle that stuff. Use no more than one splice between ends or disconnect points. You know what a butt splice is?
Yeah, it's like where two wires go into something and you crimp each side of it.
Yep. There you go. Butt splice, butt splice. There's also, okay, these are, so what we're talking about is you can't have like 4 of these things. Wire gets cut or damaged once, you can put 1 of these in. That's it. You can't put a second one in because every one of these adds resistance. Okay, and aside from butt splices, butt splice is not something that you can take apart. So if it's designed like a lot of cowlings, my cowling, I have the landing lights up in the cowling, and so I've got a disconnect somewhere to disconnect that to go to take the cowling off. If I used a butt splice, then every time I want to take the cowling off, what I got to do?
Break it, resplice it.
I got to cut it, then cut the ends off, and hope that I got enough wire to bring it back in. You only do that a couple times, you'll be running out of wire. So only 1 of these. Now another type of connector that we use in aviation, because automotive you use the little socket types that just plug in like that. Right? Well, I should say automotive, if it comes out of the factory, it's got some sort of plastic thing with a catch on it and a latch and everything, and they work very well. We use these things called handshakes. And
Don't they have any insulation on them?
oh, they don't have insulation on it, but that's a handshake connector, and I wish I could make it
Yeah,
bigger.
Can you get a better
Is
picture
it
of
2
that?
posts that pretty much go
Let me see.
together?
So what do you do?
Hang on.
Fucking roll your sleeves up around or something like that? And start shaking hands?
Just want a really big image. This is made like that small, or take forever to load because school doesn't want us. This could be porn.
Right click in there? I see how it works. You just gotta move your mouse over the part you get.
There we go. Technology. So 2 of those. They kind of do this lock-in thing, so they can't come apart. All right, so they are bare metal, and naturally, like my cowling is fiberglass. So can I have 1 wire going to my lights? No, I got to have 2. Why 2? Got to have a ground and a positive. So I got a ground and a positive right next to each other. Got these handshakes and these handshakes. What happens there?
Short.
That is called a short. And how do you know if you have a short? I have a short indicator in my airplane.
The fuse
Circuit breaker pops out. So what you do is you put shrink wrap over them. Everybody know what shrink wrap is? Or
Heat
vinyl
shield.
tubing?
Yeah.
Heat shield, heat shrink tubing. So heat shrink tubing is stuff we use a lot in aviation. It's a tubing that's sort of plastic rubber, if you will, and it's kind of larger. It just barely fits over what you want, and then you literally take a Bic lighter and you just use an open flame and it shrinks on it.
You're saying you use those instead of butt splices?
Yes.
You don't use butt splices?
I don't, because I got to take them apart all the time. These just come right apart.
So you just cut the heat shrink every single fucking time. And then you have to
Well, okay, so I don't heat shrink it. So I use heat shrink, put it over the slice, don't shrink it. It's an insulator. And then what I do, right where the 2 meet, put a nylon tie around it.
Oh, you gotta go over that again.
I think I understand.
Right there. So then put a nylon, so put heat shrink over the whole thing. Get a piece of heat shrink about yay long. Slide it over both connectors. Then put a nylon tie right here in the middle.
So it holds them together.
So it looks like a
Holds
little
together.
bow tie, a little wrapped up package.
Just a little bow tie wrapped
So
up package.
Cute.
And then when you need to get in there, you cut the
Cut the
nylon tie,
Yeah.
slide the heat shrink away, undo them, and pull them off. And then I just lied to you. My airplane does not have those. I forgot. That was my other airplane. It has a plastic connector, but anyway. But then I nylon tie together.
I feel like there's a better way
I mean, no wonder the school's afraid of what you're looking at. You have to censor it.
than that.
Yeah. All right. You just have to think about what you're doing in aviation. You always stop and think, okay, so I forgot. My airplane, it has kind of an automotive style white connectors that come together with little latch. Well, my airplane is now 46 years old. What do you think happened to that little plastic latch? It broke sometime about 20 years ago, probably. So it fits together real nice, but nothing holds it. So what happens if that comes apart in flight?
You lose light.
I lose a light. Well, if I'm flying around day VFR, does it matter?
Not as much, yeah.
No, but I don't use my lights day VFR. I'm going to use them when if my magneto wouldn't have failed, I'd use them tonight going home. So I get to Lodi where it's nice and dark, and I go to flip on my lights, and I have no lights coming in. So is that a problem? No, just get out and fix it, right? So, you know, it's like, what do you do at that point? Well, at least, you know, I take mine and I always loop some nylon ties and hold it together. So, you know, everything's got to be vibration proof, as much as you can idiot proof. Yeah. So I got to make sure it all works out. All right. Should we finish this up?
Yeah.
All right. And then get you out of here. All right. I'm not going to go over, unless you want me to, altitude compensation and bundle compensation. It's not on the test, and it is complicated, and I think most people go, I don't know what you just said. The charts are in 4313. Oh, we could do it. You want to do it?
I'm game.
Let me see. I have the charts here. Let's take a break.
Take a break.
All right, take a break. Come back.